Welcome to Calm Sleepy Tales, and thank you for joining me for tonight's tale, The Mist Window, a story set in Widdersham, centred around the Misty Teacup tea room and its enigmatic proprietor, Miss Theodora Plum. This tale weaves together the tea room's whimsical lore, the unique ambience, and the charming tradition of assigning tea names to regular patrons. First, let's begin by letting go of the day and enjoy this moment of stillness. Find a comfortable position, let your head rest, and close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently exhale. With each breath, imagine the air around you becoming softer, warmer, more peaceful. As you breathe, feel the tension in your jaw, your forehead, and your back begin to melt away. Let your hands rest. Let your feet soften. Feel your body begin to relax. Your shoulders, your arms, your legs, slowly becoming heavier, as if they're sinking gently into the bed beneath you. Imagine the worries of the day slowly dissolving, like mist in the morning sunlight, drifting away, leaving only peace behind. You are safe. You are warm. You are exactly where you need to be. Let yourself surrender to this comfort. And when you're ready, we'll begin tonight's story. In the heart of Widdersham, tucked just off the market square, behind a vine-laced archway, stood the Misty Teacup tea room. Its hanging sign, a silver teacup wreathed in tendrils of mist, from which rose a soft curl of steam shaped like a question mark, invited passers-by into a realm where time sighed and stories steeped in every porcelain cup. The air inside always carried the comforting scent of rose hips and cinnamon. Mismatched tables, each named after a wind, Zephyr, Borealis, Sirocco, were scattered about, influencing the nature of conversations held upon them. A tea library lined one wall, boasting tins labelled Whim Leaf, Rose Reminiscence, Fog and Fennel, and Widdersham Grey, each exuding aromas that stirred forgotten memories. Miss Theodora Plum, the tea room's ageless proprietor, moved gracefully among the tables. With silvery blonde hair tied up with a velvet ribbon and eyes the colour of stormy skies, she wore layered skirts and shawls in misty greys and dusky mauves, accented with antique brooches shaped like moon phases. Her presence was both comforting and mysterious, and she had an uncanny ability to sense exactly what each visitor needed before they spoke. Regular patrons were affectionately known by their tea names, bestowed by Miss Plum, based on the tea that resonated with their spirit on their first visit. There was Heartbrew Harold, whose comforting presence mirrored the grounding chai he favoured, and Moon Milk Marjorie, whose dreamy demeanour matched the vanilla and starlit honey notes of her preferred latte. One foggy afternoon, a newcomer entered the tea room. A young woman with a curious glint in her eye. Miss Plum greeted her with a warm smile and guided her to the Sirocco table. "Welcome, dear. May I suggest the forget-me-not infusion for you today?" The young woman nodded, and soon a delicate cup of blue-hued tea was placed before her. As she sipped, the misted window beside her seat began to clear, revealing fleeting images, dancing figures in a meadow, a distant lighthouse, a pair of clasped hands. Startled, she looked to Miss Plum, who simply nodded. The mist window reveals what you need to see, not always what you wish to. The young woman, sipping her forget-me-not infusion, noticed an exchange at the Zephyr table with interest. Not a single word of advice had been offered aloud, and yet something unspoken passed between them like a gift. She turned back to her own cup. The mist in the window had shifted again. Now it showed a field of wild flowers beneath a silver sky. A path led through the middle of it, and though she didn't know where it went, she suddenly felt ready to follow it. The young woman returned the next day and the day after, each time witnessing new visions in the mist window. With each visit, her demeanour softened and a sense of peace settled over her. On her final visit, she approached Miss Plum with gratitude. "Thank you for the tea and the visions. They've helped me find clarity." Miss Plum smiled gently. The tea merely opens the heart. The rest comes from within. As the young woman departed, the tea room returned to its gentle hum. The scent of rose hips and cinnamon lingered in the air, and the mist window once again fogged over, awaiting the next story to unfold. On the same foggy afternoon, the newcomer arrived. The Zephyr table was already hosting a quiet storm of its own. The Zephyr table, circular, with carved vines curling along its legs, sat closest to the fire, under a softly glowing lantern that flickered like a memory just remembered. Miss Plum always said the Zephyr table had a habit of drawing in stories needing to be shared. Seated there were Hearthbrew Harold, his hands clasped around a chipped mug of chai, and Murmur Mac, a wiry fellow with a scarf he never took off, and a tin of lemon pastils he always offered but never ate himself. Harold had just taken a long, grounding sip of his hearth brew when he spoke up, voice low and cinnamon warm. Funny thing, dreams. I had one last night. My late wife, Evie, was in it, wearing that ridiculous yellow bonnet she always said made her look like a duck. Mac chuckled softly, setting his teaspoon down. And did she? Oh, she did. Absolutely. But she also made the best plum jam this side of the river. I could smell it in the dream. I woke up starving and sad. Miss Plum, passing by with a fresh pot of fog and fennel, paused just briefly. She gently refilled Harold's cup and set a saucer of teacup tarts between the men. Evie always said the tart crust had to be pinched, not pressed, she said, with a ghost of a smile. She'd be cross if I did it any other way. Harold's eyes misted behind his spectacles. He didn't speak, but his thumb ran over the rim of his cup like it was tracing an old memory. Mac, ever the deflector, broke the silence. I once thought I'd marry a girl from Tintlebrook. Wrote her a poem about nettles and regret. Never sent it, thank heavens. Harold raised a brow. Why nettles? Mac shrugged. I was 17. Everything felt dramatic. Across the table, Borealis B, who always wore velvet gloves and read tea leaves like they were sheet music, leaned over from her spot. You ever think the tea gives us what we're not ready to ask for? Or maybe it listens better than we do, Harold mused. They sat in a moment of shared quiet, the kind that settled only at the Zephyr table. Just the soft clink of a sugar spoon, the crackle of the fire, and the light hush of mist brushing the tea room windows. Then Mac added with a half smile, "The tea knew I needed to hear about plum jam today. It always does." Miss Plum, across the room now, glanced over her shoulder and gave a slow, knowing nod. The Borealis table, where wonder lingers, sits under the mist window, where fog often curls like frost on glass. It's a table of quiet revelations, usually hosting those who speak more with their eyes than their mouths. Today, Miss Theodora Plum herself had seated a young couple there, Emery and Lynette, newly moved to Widdersham and barely speaking to each other. Theodora serves them moon milk latte and murmur macaroons, placing each cup with care. This table is for those who are lost but don't yet know what they've misplaced, she says quietly, before leaving them in a hush of harp music. Lynette looks into her cup first. The cream swirls into a shape unmistakable, a swing hanging from a lone tree. "That was the summer before my brother left," she whispers, more to the cup than Emery. Emery watches his own tea. A tiny lighthouse forms in the swirl, its beam flickering. "I've been trying to guide us back," he says. "I just didn't know where the shore was." Neither speaks again for a long moment, but their hands find each other's across the table. A minute later, the mist window clears on its own. It shows the exact swing Lynette had described, swaying gently in a summer breeze no one else can feel. The Sirocco table, for stories yet to begin, is nearest the door, beside a patchwork chair draped with a hand-woven shawl. It is the table of first visits and fresh winds, a place where strangers pause just long enough to find something that was waiting for them. This morning, Lark, a quiet painter from across the moor, sits alone. She's sketching with a whimsy wax crayon, which has begun to doodle on its own. She watches her tea, a Widdersham grey blend with a curl of lemon. In the swirling steam, she sees a tiny boat with wings. Theodora notices. She brings over a small box wrapped in rose-scented twine. "Someone left this here weeks ago," Theodora says, eyes unreadable. "I think it was waiting for you." Inside is a teacup, hand-painted, with winged boats, just like the one Lark saw in the steam. Tucked beneath it, a note in crayon. Fly your story before it fades. That afternoon, Lark buys 3 more crayons, a tart shaped like a moth, and a packet of fog and fennel for courage. She leaves smiling, and outside the weather lifts just slightly. By twilight, the tea room has grown quieter, steeped in lingering stories and sweet perfume. Cats curl near the hearth. The mist window fogs once more. Theodora Plum locks the till, hums a tune no one's heard before, and pours herself a final cup of forget-me-not infusion. The steam reveals the image of a child's drawing. A tea room with glowing windows, labelled home. She smiles softly. A good day, she murmurs. Outside, the fog thickens. Inside, the tea sings on.